Today we'll be ranking the coasters at one of our home parks, Dorney Park in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Dorney is a very underrated Cedar Fair park, which we got to visit 3 times last year in 2020. Where will the 7 coasters of Dorney Park fall? Find out next on Coaster Jawn. As a friendly reminder, if you'd like to see more lists like this in the future, please consider subscribing to the channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any future content. Even though Dorney is a personal favorite of mine, it definitely doesn't have a legendary coaster lineup, but it does have enough coasters and flat rides to keep you entertained for the day. That being said, let's get into our list. Number 7. Woodstock Express, built by Zamperla in 2000. Yeah, this thing is just a kiddie coaster. It can be found at so many other parks across the country. I give it a 1.5 out of 10. Get the credit and get out of there. Next, number 6. Wild Mouse, built by Maurer in 2000. Wild Mouses always have a place in every coaster lineup. Definitely a feasible family coaster, fun for all ages, but this one isn't really anything special. It also tends to get a pretty long line, so knock this credit out early on in the day. I give it a 2.5 out of 10 because it's a middle-of-the-road Wild Mouse, but still much better than my least favorite Wild Mouse, Gotham City Gauntlet at Six Flags New England. Number 5. Thunderhawk, built by Philadelphia Toboggan Coasters in 1924. For a coaster that's getting close to 100 years old, it's actually still running pretty well. Yes, there are a few rough patches and minor moments of jackhammering, but the bounty of airtime definitely makes up for it. Thunderhawk has a very classic feel and is a fun ride depending on the day you ride it, but can sometimes get unbearably rough. One more nitpick is that there's this one trim break on one of the returning airtime hills, which really bugs me. Either way, Thunderhawk is a staple of Dorney's lineup, so I give it a 6 out of 10. However, Dorney could really use that rumored Gravity Group shuttle coaster to complement this. Number 4. Possessed, built by Intamin in 2008. A former coaster of Geauga Lake, Possessed is a very fun Intamin impulse. Impulses are shuttle launch coasters with very simple back and forth layouts, but the speed on Possessed is just too much fun. I'm sure for other enthusiasts, impulses are probably a bit boring, but since Possessed is only one of 2 impulses I've ever ridden, I still find it incredibly thrilling. It was a shame no one got to ride it in 2020, but I'm looking forward to getting back on it this year before it's rumored to be removed to make way for that Gravity Group coaster I mentioned earlier. I give Possessed a 7 out of 10 for its speed and intensity, so it just barely hangs on to a spot in my top 100 coasters. Number 3. Hydra the Revenge, built by Bolliger and Mabiard in 2005. You all know how much I love unique coasters, and Hydra is the definition of unique. With that JoJo roll out of the station, a straight first drop, slanted Cobra Hill, and an airtime hill, Hydra might be one of the most unique floorless coasters out there. Built on a plot of land formerly occupied by the wooden coaster Hercules, the mythical beast Hydra has finally gotten its revenge over the Greek hero, hence the name Hydra the Revenge. So the ride has a cool theme, but there is zero theming in the station or queue to go with it. Also, I used to like Hydra a lot more than I do now. The more rides I get on it, the more of a rattle I notice, and the more headbanging I get. This painful experience is actually more likely to occur in the front row somehow, even though most coasters are rougher in the back. So even though I wouldn't necessarily call it a smooth ride, it's definitely still a fun, one-of-a-kind experience. I give Hydra another 7 out of 10, so I still really like it a lot more than other coasters. And now, the moment you've been waiting for. What is the number 1 coaster at Dorney Park? Well, it either has to be Talon or Steel Force, so let's reveal our number 2 coaster. Number 2. Talon, built by Bolliger and Mabiard in 2001. Dorney Park definitely had a grand expansion in the late 90s and early 2000s, but it's a shame that they haven't added much since. Nonetheless, Talon's smoothness is what gives it the edge over Hydra. Talon is arguably the smoothest B&M invert I've ever ridden, but its layout unfortunately doesn't do quite as much as rides like Alpengeist, Montu, and Banshee. But make no mistake, Talon is still an awesome ride. For an inverted coaster, there are some unique elements here and there, like a helix through the bushes and almost an airtime hill of some kind halfway through the ride. But like I said earlier, I love this ride for its smoothness. All B&M inverts are intense, as is Talon, but Talon is so buttery smooth that its intensity is not uncomfortable whatsoever. Unfortunately for Talon, it only has 4 inversions and somewhat of a short layout too, which is a shame, but I still love it. I give Talon an 8.5 out of 10, and truly do think it's an underrated B&M invert. However, there is just one coaster at Dorney that tops this list, and that's number 1, Steel Force, built by Morgan in 1997. The flagship attraction of Dorney is, of course, Steel Force. I had so many great rides on Steel Force last year, which has catapulted it very high in my rankings. This thing is awesome. It may be weird and wacky at times, but it still delivers with both positive and negative G-forces. The lift hill provides great views of the Lehigh Valley, and even though the train crawls over that first drop, you still get really good floater airtime in the back row. Like many coasters, ride in the back row for airtime and ride in the front row for speed and intensity. After the first drop, Steel Force then goes through its first tunnel, then into a camelback, which doesn't really do a whole lot force-wise. Then you're over the creek and into the massive helix, where you can get up close and personal views of Hydra and see some of the old footers from Hercules. This helix is where Steel Force picks up a ton of speed as you head back towards the station. Unfortunately, Steel Force is slightly slowed down by a mid-course brake run, but from there you get non-stop flowjector airtime on the return trip back to the station. Steel Force flies over 5 bunny hills and then has a straight section over the midway and into the brake run. Many people say that Steel Force lacks airtime, and maybe if I can try out some of those other Morgan Hypers across the country, I can see for myself whether or not this ride model has airtime. But for me, Steel Force is a crazy fun ride and always puts a smile on my face. So that's why I give it a solid 9.5 out of 10, and it tops this list. And that's all 7 coasters at Dorney Park ranked. What did you think of the list? Leave a comment down below whether you think Talon or even Hydra deserves the #1 spot. Do you think Steel Force is overrated or underrated? Let me know. And of course, if you want more content like this in the future, please subscribe to Coaster Jawn and hit that notification bell. Until next time, ride on.